Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on one of the major initiatives in Egypt's modern history, the Decent Life Initiative. Now, we are entering the second phase of this initiative, the initiative that aims to really work and develop on more than 4,000 villages around Egypt. We're going to be focusing on the second phase and this file tonight, but before we start doing that, let's check out some of the stories making the news today. We'll start off with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who hosted a tripartite summit with the Jordanian King Abdullah II and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas at Al Ittihadiyya Presidential Palace in Cairo. The three leaders discussed the latest developments in the occupied Palestinian territories, in addition to a number of regional and international issues of mutual concern. A final statement said President al-Sisi and King Abdullah asserted the full support to the Palestinian president's efforts during the current delicate juncture of the Palestinian cause. They asserted the need for an international protection for the Palestinian people and for their legitimate rights, adding that equally important is a real political horizon that re-kicks serious peace negotiations on the two-state solution basis. The three leaders said all unilateral Israeli measures that would undermine the two-state solution or change the historical legal status of Jerusalem and its sacred places are illegitimate and should be halted. In their statement, they called for Palestinian unity and said serious measures are needed to alleviate the hardships facing the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Both Jordan's king and the Palestinian president hailed Egypt's efforts to maintain truce in Gaza and to continue reconstruction in the Strip, asserting the responsibility of international donors to help with these efforts. Over the UNRWA, the three leaders emphasized the role the agency plays in the provision of different services to the Palestinian refugees, saying it should continue by virtue of its mandate. They agreed that the Egyptian-Jordanian-Palestinian consultations will continue within a tripartite formula on all levels, with an aim of forging a plan to activate efforts to resume negotiations and to work with friends and partners to revive the peace process. And Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry said Egypt is striving to overcome current challenges that have largely impacted the whole world. In an interview with the American news network CNN on the sidelines of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, Shoukry explained that the economic reform program Egypt began in 2016 faces the repercussions of both the coronavirus pandemic and the Ukrainian crisis. The top diplomat, however, said the state efforts are exerted to overcome these challenges through attracting investments. Shoukry, who is also president of the UN Climate Conference, COP27, stressed on the need to put forth mechanisms needed for obtaining financial aid that would help tackle climate change challenges ahead of the upcoming conference, COP28. The foreign minister added that Egypt aspires to be a hub for green hydrogen, noting the Green Hydrogen Initiative launched by Egypt in cooperation with Belgium during the COP27. And joining us now over the phone to shed more light on the tripartite summit between the President al-Sisi, the Jordanian King Abdullah II, and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, we're joined by Dr. Sharif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris. Dr. Amir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Dr. Amir, now today the tripartite summit took place between the leaders of Egypt, Jordan and Palestine. They talked about the Palestinian issue, the Palestinian file that's been going on for decades now. And they spoke about a plan to really help secure and reconstruct the Gaza Strip. Now, how would you see the importance of the meeting between the three leaders concerning the Palestinian issue?
Well, of course, it was expected after the creation of the new Israeli government led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And we all know that at the first week, the Minister of National Security in the Israeli government, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who was a right-wing hardliner, decided to get on the Temple Mount or in Jerusalem to around Al-Aqsa Mosque. And of course, this is a very, very sensitive question. And Itamar Ben-Gvir is known for his positions. So it was like a provocation. And I think that Egypt and Jordan made it clear to the Israeli government that we would not accept any violation of the status quo of Jerusalem, and no one would accept that the religious sites would be threatened like it was last week. So I think that now there is a show of solidarity with the legitimate Palestinian Authority in the presence of Mr. Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen. The Jordanians, we all know that Jordan historically has the control over the holy sites in Jerusalem. So the King Abdullah II, is very concerned about this action. We all know also that the Israeli government now has also the plan, a revival of the plan of the what we call it the confederation between a Palestinian state and Jordan inside Jordan itself. This is a plan that the right wing and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also endorsed many times, and many in his coalition are just endorsing it. And this is a replacement plan to the one-state solution, to the two-state solution, sorry. And the point of Gaza, I think that this is also a message to the Palestinians themselves that they have to unite. They have to agree on one position now, because the fact that there is an authority in the West Bank, in Ramallah, and an authority in Gaza, it just gives excuses to Israel to act militarily against Gaza when it suits, and act in settlement construction in the West Bank when it suits. So this kind of division is very harmful.
Well, with the return of Benjamin Netanyahu to the Israeli top seat, do you feel that there would be a difference this time around to his previous tenure as a prime minister? Do you feel that the dynamics or the nature of the relationships or the mediation efforts or the negotiations between the Palestinian side and the Israeli side, do you think that there will be some sort of a difference this time around as opposed to the previous tenure when Benjamin Netanyahu was prime minister as well?
I think this would be decided by many facts on the ground. The first thing is the Iranian file. If the West and Iran will agree upon the nuclear issue, I think that Israel at that time would be forced to act. And I think that the Gulf countries who signed the peace treaties with Israel also would not be happy to see that Iran has been promoted to in a nuclear state, whether it's military or peaceful reactors. So I think this will change, of course, the dynamics. This is on the Iranian file. On the Palestinian file, I think that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu surrounded himself this time by very hardline figures like Smotrich. Mr. Smotrich is a disciple of the late Mayor Kahane, and he's a hardliner also, and Mr. Itamar Ben-Gvir. These are the pillars of the right-wing Israeli religious Zionist parties, and they are the ones who are keeping his government alive, and of course Shas also. So it's a coalition of the right wing, and we all know it is the result of a democratic election. That means that this was the choice of the Israeli people. So I think that Benjamin Netanyahu now is the reflection of the will of the people of Israel, which is having a right-wing government who would not really negotiate with anyone, who would have hardline positions on every issue. He has the green light now. Before, no, to answer your question, before he had many problems inside the Knesset, many problems because of the Kahol Laban, meaning the blue and white party. He had many problems with other opposition and inside the coalition parties. Now it does not exist, these differences. They are all one now. They are all elected, and they are all hardliners. None of them is willing to negotiate, whether with the Palestinians, whether with Iranians, whether with anyone. But I think that Benjamin Netanyahu understands also that the peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan is highly important for the security of Israel, and the peace treaties also with the Gulf states is also very important economically. He wants to sign the same thing with Saudi Arabia. So I think that we will see some maneuvers, but this would be just light maneuvers because at the end, the government is a hardliner government. They are aiming for settlement, security, and no negotiations with the Palestinians.
Dr. Amir, one final question now. The three leaders spoke about cooperating and finding some way cooperating with other friendly partners around the globe to deal with the peace negotiations and try and mediate the peace negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Who would be those partners? Who would these friendly partners be, considering that everyone is embroiled in the repercussions of the Ukrainian-Russian situation?
Well, the answer is within your question, is that no one now is able to work on this issue, the Israeli-Palestinian issue. No one has in the international community, whether the Biden administration or the European Union. So it's hard to say who would be willing to mediate. Maybe the only powerful voices now who are concerned in these issues are the local, in the regional forces like Egypt, like Jordan, like the Emirates, even Turkey also. And we have, of course, also Russia and China. Why I'm mentioning both of them? Because the last Security Council resolution was pushed by China against Israel. So that means that China is taking part in this act or this conflict also. And Russia made its comments about her comments about the intervention of Israel, whether in the Ukrainian conflict or in the actions on the ground in the Middle East. So I think that, and also Russia has the ties with Israel concerning the security preparations inside Syria. You know that from time to time Israel has to strike some positions there. So and Russia controls the skies there. Mm-hmm. So I think that the countries that I mentioned are concerned. The EU and the United States, I think they're not prepared now to take any part in any mediation.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Sharif Amir, the Professor of Geopolitical Affairs at the University of Paris, thank you very much for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, turning our attention to the Decent Life Initiative, our topic tonight, let's check out this report regarding President Sisi reviewing the early phase of the Decent Life Initiative, and we'll be right back.
President Fattah Sisi discussed the early phase on Decent Life Initiative, which is a strategy targeting 32 million people in some of Egypt's poorest villages. President Sisi announced a major expansion of the government's efforts to reduce Egypt's poverty with a new initiative that will see more than 1,000 of Egypt's poorest villages undergo major development. Planning and Economic Development Minister Hala Said spoke about some of the specifics of the plan, which will be a more comprehensive version of Egypt's Decent Life Initiative. The government will develop towns and villages across the country to cut down on overpopulation, aiming to prioritize major developmental projects to new cities and villages outside the capital in order to create employment opportunities outside of Egypt's main cities. The project targets 1,000 small villages nationwide in light of the Decent Life program, with the aim of improving the citizens' standard of living, alleviate poverty, develop the infrastructure and basic services such as education, housing, electricity, sanitation, drinking water and health units. This is in addition to creating sustainable jobs. This means not leaving any house or road untouched by development. The latest announcement from the President will improve the lives of 12.5 million citizens in Egypt's poorest regions. The program will span 3 to 4 years and will improve the villages' sanitation, access to clean water, education, employment, and above all else, people's homes. So far, initiatives have mainly targeted villages in Upper Egypt, particularly around Asyut and Sohag, but also has seen work in Giza, Minya, Qena, Luxor, Aswan, New Valley, Qalyubiyya, Bahira, Marsa Matruh, and North Sinai, all areas which have more than 70% poverty. A major interest of the government is to wean impoverished regions of Egypt, particularly Upper Egypt, of the old subsidy system that increased monetary support to families based on how many children they had. This incentivized the Upper Egyptian families to have more kids without employment opportunities. This contributed to poverty rather than alleviating it. While the Karama and Takaful social solidarity and crash transfer programs have been a part of Egypt's Decent Life Initiative, the government wants to move from keeping people alive to make them productive, which will require major infrastructure developments to provide electricity, sanitation, water treatments, and high-quality affordable housing to Egypt's villages. Meanwhile, Egypt starts the second stage of Decent Life Initiative, which comprises a series of countryside-focused national infrastructure projects this month. The second stage of the presidential scheme is planned to cover 1,670 villages countrywide to provide services for some 20 million citizens.
Egypt's
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio to shed more light on the Decent Life Initiative and other aspects of this initiative. We're joined by Dr. May Batran, the former chair of the Telecommunications Committee at the Egyptian Parliament and the foresight expert. Dr. Batran, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure being here.
Dr. Batran, now, we want to talk about a few things regarding the Decent Life Initiative. We're going to talk about the financing of it. We're going to talk about the slum areas as well that are not maybe seen as part of the over 4,000 villages, but are part and parcel of the Decent Life Initiative. But before we start doing that, this is an initiative that was thought of and introduced in 2019, launched in July 2021. Now we are in 2023, we're entering a second phase. How would you review the progress and the achievement so far of the first phase of this initiative to where we are now?
Well, it's a very interesting question. Thank you for the question, and thank you. The numbers say it all. The project started off by targeting 4,000 villages. The number of villages that that actually have seen the Decent Life Initiative, if you will, the Haya Karima. The word Karima, I want to put more of an emphasis on the Karima part, the decency, the quality of life. This is something that for us in Egypt, we were not really thinking about. It was always about a mad rat race, about making ends meet. It still is, I'm not saying, but we are living, the shelter is a decent shelter. The roads that we walk on are decent roads. The quality of air, they are trying to better it all the time. The pollution of the water and the canals around the Decent Life Initiatives, the part that have already been done, people didn't appreciate 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. What is it about those canals and how the cushioning of the canals that took place? So this took the Egyptian farmland to another level. It's the decency of living. It's not the garbage being thrown around and the flies and the quality of air over there. No, we have now very nice corniches, if you will, everywhere in Egypt, as the canals should be, part of a very interesting, intricate, sustainable ecosystem in which we live, in which livestock, our livestock that we eat and use, live, and by which our children pass through going to school. So you're really educating people to look at nice views, smell clean air. And so the way to school is an easy, decent way. That's the start of the success. You start seeing beyond the numbers, beyond what we have done in terms of efficiency, criteria and efficacy of the project. I want to look at other aspects as well. So it's the way to school. If the school is very far, schools in the Decent Life Initiative have been made near. So this is something that's very important. If the health entity, the hospital is too far and too sparse, it's part of the national health system to build more hospitals and to build more health centers nearer, so that you don't need to take your diseased person, unhealthy person, far away from your home. So as we want our children to be educated decently and well, so we have nearer schools with less capacity per classroom. We want our sick people to be well, easily and quickly, without a big burden on the family. So we make health centers nearer. We infuse health centers with the right medical experience and staff and professionals. And this is still part of the Decent Life Initiatives, because what you do is that I want to give doctors more income. I want to increase the income of doctors, of nurses, of the health staff. I want to give some sort of rebate or incentive, financial and other incentives, so that they would go and have their time out of Cairo or away from home in the villages of Egypt. So you want to give incentives at the time where there is strife, not only in Egypt, but in the world. At the time where there are people trying to lure our medical staff out. You know, the number of medical staff that we lose every year is massive. And as you know, now we do have private medical institutions in Egypt, but until last 10 years, there was only the public health institutions in Egypt and the public educational institutions. The School of Medicine of Cairo, Ain Shams, Banha, all of the universities of Egypt, they were all public schools to which we paid peanuts. You pay 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds a year, where students cost the country. The country actually pays for these students over 20 and 15 to 25,000 pounds, depending on the where and when, over the last decade. So this is all investment that the country has done. Some of it hasn't returned because there is a lure to work abroad. And some of the countries of the world, I'm sorry I took aside the issue, but some of the countries of the world, like Germany, for example, they don't need accreditation for the Egyptian doctor. So in the States there is, but in Germany they don't need. If you have qualified the qualification in Egypt, the professional qualification is accepted in Germany because they know the caliber that they are getting. So it makes it easier, but then it's a cycle. I want the doctor to go there, so I'm giving him incentive. I want the student to be able to go on a decent road, clean canals, so that he is accustomed to see a clean environment around him. And this is you're enhancing the level. I don't want to say enhancing the level of humanity, because we are human people, but enhancing the level of life, the quality of life in which people are living in a very subtle but encompassing, integrated way.
Yes. Dr. Batran, now the Decent Life Initiative deals with developing over 4,600 villages. The first phase, 1,477. However, these are not only the governmental efforts in really developing and granting and providing a decent life for the Egyptian citizens. I mean, they worked also on developing slums, be it in and around at the outskirts of big major cities. And it's been going on for a few years now, buildings, markets, relocating citizens, relocating markets, working on the infrastructure. Do these sort of projects and these sort of developmental projects in and around the outskirts of the big cities, do they pose a different challenge to the initiative working on the villages around the countrysides all over the country?
I want to use the word decent life. The decent life is not about villages only. It's about an integrated effort of the country of Egypt, of the state of Egypt, with all its institutions, whether be it governmental, civil societies, business people and business community, even volunteers, young Egyptian and not young, and even senior citizens wanting to volunteer and give from their time. And to integrate all of this effort, be it an effort, or be it financial, or be it a plan, a strategic plan, into one road of making life better for everybody. For me by giving, for somebody else by receiving, and for the whole community by having a balanced community, if you will. A give, receive, making a difference, putting in money, making the money move around. So this is really this is the decency of the life. This is the initiative in itself. For when we talk about the Decent Life Initiative, it started in 1919 under that name, but the objective of the Decent Life has been there with us since 2014, really. This is in my personal, humble opinion. I believe that when the country goes through a direction, you mentioned unplanned areas. The unplanned areas were slums, no electricity, no sewage, water, maybe electricity coming from illegal ways, water coming in very haphazard ways, but definitely no sewage. That made the movement of falling down of whole areas at one point. I remember this maybe over 20 years ago. But anyways, so when you And then I want to mention also the Maslow law of needs. You start by having the food and shelter. If you give good food and a shelter over one's head, then you go to the top of the pyramid is the self-actualization. In order to self-actualize, you have to be safe and sheltered, away from the elements. So the Egypt started to work with 357 unplanned areas, مناطق عشوائية, at the start of 2014. And now we have nearly eradicated. We have still another, I believe, 30 something, because we have finished 312 out of the 357. So you are talking about huge steps that have been taken to relocate over 1 million families from one place where they lived in slums, in dark, small, inhuman spaces, into the larger decent homes that you could bring up families, balanced families. You cannot, for example, in very small, unsafe areas, to say you're not supposed to play with the oven or play with fire, or you have to have a decency of your physical being if there is no space.
Yes.
Everybody is living within 1 meter and 2.5 meters. You can barely fit a bed in the space where whole families lived. So this has taken things a little bit further. For the Decent Life Initiative, having people living from unsafe to safe areas, if you remove the unsafety, the UN part, the unsafe part, and you turn it into a safe, so this is the time where you can develop, where you can innovate, where you can give, where you can educate yourself, where you can be educated. So this is part, again, of the Decent Life Initiative, where you decide, you know what, I was in a bad place, now I want to help other people, so you want to give back. It is a full circle. The Decent Life that has started in 2019 with the rural areas, you are talking about the change of the life of the agricultural community of Egypt. And we have to really emphasize from an economic point of view that agriculture is a very important economic component of the Egyptian society. No, I don't want to say economic. I want to say strategic national security component.
Yes.
Because this is what we all eat. If you don't possess your food, you don't possess your destiny. So now, at the time of strife in the world, if you enhance the level of humanity to the Egyptian farmer and his family and the tomorrow of his children, you are not ensuring the national security of your country. Food security is part of the national security of the country.
Yes.
So you are giving him a better life. You are making his life easier. He sleeps better, sleeps in a healthier environment, so that he can give what we all need from him. Yani if for me you are putting citizens in order, the farmer comes really close to the teacher that educates the country for tomorrow, that creates tomorrow's leaders.
Yes.
The farmer is the one who feeds us all, who feeds our very important soldiers on the line, our very important teachers, and our children who are the citizens of tomorrow. He feeds us all.
Yes.
He feeds the media, he feeds the civil society.
Yes.
So you are enhancing. And then we can start speaking about the agricultural industry. How can we enhance industry, industrialize and modernize the product and add on the product? If I have tomato, and the tomato grows in Upper Egypt where it's hot, so the tomato goes bad after a while, we can turn it into a paste. We don't need to import the famous, with all respect, we all eat it, the Heinz tomato product. We have fantastic tomatoes in Egypt. We don't use fertilizers in Upper Egypt. We don't use, so they are a good product. Why do you throw it away?
Yes.
So you can industrialize and make it better. And it's all part, again, of the Decent Life Initiative.
And actually, as Dr. Batran mentioned, the President has spoken about importing and facilitating and adding to the quality of the agricultural products, especially during the time of strife, and really working on making up for the food and wheat shortages that is hitting the whole world. Now, also, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has emphasized and spoke about the advantages and the significance of the Decent Life initiative. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has reiterated the significant role played by the Decent Life presidential initiative in bringing about a quantum leap in the level of various services provided to citizens in targeted villages. Madbouli also highlighted the initiative's role in generating more job opportunities for village inhabitants via their contribution to implementing various development and service projects carried out under the initiative. The Prime Minister made the remarks during a meeting he chaired to follow up on the status of Decent Life initiative to develop Egypt's countryside. The meeting was attended by Minister of Planning and Economic Development Hala Said, Minister of Housing, Utilities and Urban Communities Asim Al-Ghazzar, Minister of Education and Technical Education Rida Hkezi, in addition to senior officials from different ministries and the Armed Forces Engineering Authority. During the meeting, the Prime Minister underlined the importance of continued follow-up of the status of projects carried out as part of the initiative and dealing immediately with any challenges that may face the implementation process via coordination and cooperation among the state bodies concerned. The meeting touched on work progress in projects of the first phase of the initiative that targets 1,477 villages in which approximately 10 million citizens are living. The projects include the sectors of roads and transport, drinking water and sanitation, electricity, communications and information technology, natural gas, irrigation, health and education. The Decent Life initiative aims to provide a decent life for the most vulnerable groups nationwide over 2019. It further contributes to enhancing the quality of daily public services provided to citizens with an eye to inhabitants of rural areas. The initiative also provides health care, medical services, surgeries, and prosthetic devices to these groups. Moreover, it aims to develop Egypt's poorest villages according to the poverty map, provides job opportunities, and supports orphan girls to get married. Egypt still has more people living in rural areas than it has people living in urban areas, with 1 million people coming from the countryside to find work in the city every year. Egypt has prioritized the development of new cities to make room for the newly urbanized. However, Egypt's cities are already under strain and close to breaking under highly populated pressure. Of the 1 million Egyptians attempting to escape endemic poverty in rural areas by coming to the cities, 60% of them will find themselves building and living in illegal, informal settlements, buildings that were constructed with poor safety regulations and often on farmable lands have become a steady drain on the country. So building better places to live in areas that provide employment are the two biggest factors the government will be exploring. The government's main drive to develop Upper Egypt and Sinai have been major upgrades in agriculture. This has mainly come into forms major national projects to increase farmable lands and industrializing underdeveloped areas to increase production. In this effort, the Egyptian government has partnered with both the United Nations Development Programme and the Food and Agriculture Organization to provide training to local farmers to increase quality production and output of current operations.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Continuing our discussion with Dr. Batran. Now, this is almost estimated about a 700 billion pound project, and we're only in the first. We just finished the first phase, now entering a second and still a third phase. And everyone is talking about the financing of it, how we're going to get the money. You've mentioned that it's a very significant initiative that really works on millions of Egyptians developing and alleviating the standards of their lives, but people are not really appreciative or viewing or really enjoying the impacts of it, since the whole world, Egypt included, is going through its own energy crisis, and as you've mentioned, everyone's still trying to make ends meet. Now, how can we actually work on really realizing and enjoying the significance of such a critical and existential project for Egypt, and at the same time, how are we going to continue financing it, even though everyone is, I mean, I'm talking about the international community, everyone's reluctant to maybe invest in other countries, work on developmental projects? Are we still going for the IMF, the World Bank and the European Investment Bank, maybe other Arab donor countries? How is this going to work, the financing of it?
You said enjoy, and you said crucial and very important. It is a crucial project. And it's not a question of enjoyment. It's a question of, this is a project, the structure of the project, you have to really look into it. It's money injected into the decent life.
Yes.
It's injected into housing, infrastructure, technology, infrastructure, the canals, the environment, the microfinance even. So it's a full-fledged project. But let's look at, if we're looking at the building part, people are saying the cement, the concrete. The cement and concrete is not the use of the cement and concrete into making houses look better. It is the first layer, the first tier of companies, of mega companies working with contractors, working with the cement and concrete, and then layered by another company of under, we call يعني second tier contractors, under the first tier contractors, making smaller projects. Maybe if a big project is, or a big company has 10 kilometers of canals or 1,000 houses, you give it to smaller companies, each 100 houses or 60, 50 batches of, so you break it down. All of these people are employing people. All of these companies are employing people. And if we look at the number of people who are working in only the contracting fields, you are talking about more than 4.5 million Egyptians. So 4.5 million families are working, are eating from the proceeds of their salaries from the infrastructure projects, among which are Hayat Karima. This is number one. So it is not a luxury. It is actually, you are putting food on the table of 4.5 million families. And the Hayat Karima component, the people who are working within certain areas are people from the areas themselves. So you are talking about the families from within. So you are really talking about maintaining the labor force, the non-farming labor force of the different villages in which Hayat Karima exists. Yes. And then when you talk about the microfinance for families and particularly for women, so empowering the women farmers within the family, you are also adding on to the agricultural family income. So it's not only from the land, but it's from microfinance project into enhancing handcrafts and food products. If you're talking about the cheese making, you're talking about the stitching in certain areas, you're talking about the hay and the, you know, like from the palm trees. So you're really talking about an integrated program, and you take the products and you take it somewhere else. So this is the project. You cannot stop because we have a financial crunch, because the financial crunch will not be, I will stop building 1,000 homes or renovating or cushioning 10, 100, 1,000 extra kilometers of canals. You are talking about stopping the livelihood and putting bread on the table of over 1 million, 2 million, 3 million families.
Dr.
So when
Batran,
you, please.
Yes, well, because we are running out of time, so you're saying that the Decent Life Initiative, along with the Takaful and Karama, it's not just about handing cash over to the people, it's about really teaching them how to produce, and you've alluded to the other marginalized segments of society, the women, the people with special needs. I mean, providing all of this. Now, we are entering a second phase, going through an economic crisis. The whole world is going through an economic crisis. What should we be planning for, and what should we be expecting from a second phase? What should we be looking out for?
We should collectively want the second phase to happen, because the second phase is not, again, the building of concrete or a canal, but the injection of cash into micro communities. The Kafala and Karama, it injects 500 pounds into one person's pocket.
Yes.
What will 500 pounds do? No, don't say this collectively, but it's injecting cash into 1,000 people living in that village. So it is injecting 1,500 pounds. So it's injecting £500,000 per month in the village, from outside into the village. But where does this money go in the village? It's going from the pocket of the person who takes it into the pocket of the man who sells chicken, who sells vegetables, who sells pencils for the children to go to school. So you are talking about money circulating into the community. So it's very important for us collective Egyptians and for the local communities to want the projects to go on, to want the infusion of cash into the micro societies all over Egypt, to go into the money going into the labor force pockets, whether be it engineers or laborers or what have you, to go into their pockets so that it would come out of their pockets in their communities and start circulating. So this is really, it is not, as you mentioned, 700 billion pounds needed, but it's 700 billion pounds invested into the communities, into the livelihoods, into the food and shelter of so many Egyptians, of over half of the Egyptian population.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Dr. Batran has eloquently explained, the Decent Life Initiative does have its own advantages, and a lot of fruits and benefit will be garnered later on. But having this initiative and having these developmental projects is an investment on its own. The existence of it is actually quite beneficial and productive for the livelihood of the Egyptian citizen. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Batran, the former chair of the Telecommunications Committee at the Egyptian Parliament, and also the foresight expert. Dr. Batran, always a pleasure having you with us.
Same here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Batran. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.